So welcome everyone. Let's bow in. Welcome to the course, the Buddhist Path of Awakening course. This is, we're going through the profound treasury of the ocean of Dharma. These are the teachings of Chögyam Trungpa, and they have been collected in 3 volumes. These are the teachings that he gave every year for, I think it was 13 years, from about 1973 to 1985, when he took usually 150 to 250 students away for 3 months at a time. They would study and practice together, and he would give teachings. And the retreats were divided into 3 parts: the Hinayana section, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. These have been compiled, his talks, and edited by Judy Leaf into 3 volumes. The Hinayana volume, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana, and we are in the Mahayana volume on chapter 15, taking the Bodhisattva Vow. And tonight, Jane Sandbank is going to present. So, Jane, please.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. It's really a privilege and a great pleasure for me to be able to discuss this chapter with you. As all the other chapters, they're so rich and meaningful and important. And this one particularly resonates with me because when I started practicing meditation several years ago, I really started with Zen meditation and the teachings from Shunri Suzuki about big mind. And I'd like to really start, John reminded me how influential and close Suzuki and Trungpa were. So I'd really like to start with a quote from Suzuki's book, which I started with, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And he says, when you study Buddha, you should have a general house cleaning of your mind. And I like the idea of house cleaning your mind in order to appreciate what and understand what big mind is, because it brings it down to a very mundane, everyday level. We all know how to clean our houses. So from that, we can maybe project how to clean our minds. I'm going to talk about the first few pages, and then John will talk about the rest of the chapter. So we'll start on the first page, toward the end of the first paragraph on page 107. And I'm going to quote that bodhicitta consists of tremendous gentleness and fearlessness, which enables you to act skillfully and wisely. Bodhicitta is big-mindedness. And I love the juxtaposition of gentleness and fearlessness. It's 2 words we don't normally put together. And one can be gentle and fearless at the same time. So I'd like to begin with that. And the idea and the language of big mind, which is presented throughout the chapter in the reading. All humans possess some kind of decency. They all possess the essence of bodhicitta. And big mind and bodhicitta are one and the same in many ways. He goes on to say that our level of bodhicitta may be embryonic. And this really resonated with me because I feel I'm at a very embryonic, almost a pre-embryonic stage on the path, and that's okay. Reading this chapter helps me understand that being in an embryonic stage is a pretty decent way to begin. I mean, we all begin as embryos, and we all become children and adolescents and adults, and we age. So this is very reminiscent of what we're doing in our normal life. And to continue on page 108, he says in the second paragraph, you are offering to serve our fellow sentient beings. You are willing to give up being petty. You are willing to become a genuinely big person, a person with larger vision and fantastic openness. The world begins to invite you and welcome you. Now, the idea of being a big person since I'm 5'3" is very appealing to me. And the idea that my visions, which I believe in, are very important to whom what I am and how I behave in the world, are not big enough. And I needn't be fearful of having very big visions. And this is comforting. And to being not just open, but fantastically open. So I love this language. Everything it relates to this idea of grandeur and the grandeur of becoming a bodhicitta. And this idea of willing to give up pettiness. I don't really think about myself as petty, but I am. And in terms of the potential of generosity one can have. And to have that, one has to stop dwelling on the minutiae of our lives, which I do. The world begins to invite you and welcome you. The Tathagatas and Bodhisattvas, as well as the people of the samsaric world, begin to see a difference in you. That means you're getting different feedback from everything you do, and you have to listen to that. They see the difference between when you are tight and the days when you are virtuous. So what are the days when I'm tight? It's when I'm nervous, when I'm anxious, when I'm worried. And how that prevents me from being a more open and generous and calmer self, being more aware, being more awake, being more in touch with others. I feel sometimes, actually, the more I practice, that I see changes in myself. And I don't know if that's the constantness of the practice, of the chants, or combined with feedback that I get as a result of some shifting in my own behaviors. When you actually become a generous person, he continues, a vast, large scale, he has these big, big words, open person, and I love this, even cats and dogs and 3-month-old babies begin to feel the difference in you. And we know this is true, everybody's smiling, because if you smile at a baby or wave a 3-month or 4-year-old, they immediately give you feedback. What do? They smile back at you, or they'll look cool, or they'll say something, verbalize. And what does that do? It makes you so happy and smile. That's the best feedback. And of course, if any of you are parents or grandparents or involved with young children, interaction with them. I think John talks about, watching children at play is so joyful. And if you interact with them, there's immediate feedback. The first time you see a child walk, and this goes back to the embryonic stage, it's a cause for celebration. And one doesn't know, it's a miracle. They just get up and walk. And then they continue to, and they become pretty good walkers and runners and movers. So this is, again, a sequence of following a path as it's meant to be, because we all have this inside of us, even if we're still embryos in this. So the essence of the bodhicitta approach is to become like the Buddha. And John talks about this all the time, about how we do that. And he mentions that when we sit, as we do in the morning, in the evening, and any other time, we have our back straight, we're sitting erect, we're relaxed. Michael especially tells us to relax when we do this. We have our hands on our thighs, our feet on the ground. I have to put a pillow under my feet to get them on the ground. And we become more Buddha-like. In essence, we are pretending that we are the Buddha, and that really is okay, which is not something we often think about. We might think that it's really phony and that we shouldn't be doing that. So the last paragraph on 108 on the bottom, Trungpa says, although you may not have touched on the further levels of egolessness, and I'm going to be really honest here with you guys and women, I'm very skeptical of and really am having a lot of trouble, but this chapter helped me have less trouble with the whole concept of egolessness and losing, giving up, and not having ego. I'm still at a stage where I like my ego. I'm attached to it, I admit. Guilty as charged, but I'm working on it. So the pretending is a very good strategy. Although you may not yet have touched on the further levels of egolessness, you can pretend. You can act that way. I believe this is really a brilliant, wise, and very comforting idea. When you pretend, he continues, you are not pretending something that you are not, but something that you might be, something you already have. And as I said, when we sit upright, we are pretending to sit like the Buddha. It's also something that resonates me because this is a little personal aside. I very recently got involved seriously in competitive ballroom dancing. And I pretend very often when I visualize and when I'm dancing that I really know how to dance. I don't. I'm learning through practicing often a couple of times a week and in between. And I'm very focused. But I also watch a lot of videos of really famous, wonderful ballroom dancers, and they inspire me. And they give me a vision of what this could look like if I really knew how to do it and was further along the path of becoming a dancer. So I pretend that I can dance, and then I can dance. I am pushing myself further. And the idea of pushing yourself further brings us to the importance of a teacher, a spiritual teacher, a friend. This Sangha, this group, has been such a wonderful support and has furthered me, and I know many of you around the Zoom room has also furthered your practice in pushing us, prompting us, talking to us about your own struggles and your own victories as you continue to move along the path. So doing so allows you to be a decent person, a good person, and so heroic. Heroic. I don't think we often see ourselves as heroic, but we are. And if you really look at it, I'm sure all of you have had moments where you maybe were unconscious that you were acting as a hero, you were courageous, you were brave, you helped somebody, you intervened and took a risk in order to make something better for somebody else. And that is heroic. And it reminds me of the David Bowie song, which I love, you know, we can all be heroes just for one day, just for one day. And the background story is of two lovers who knew it could absolutely not work out. The relationship could not work out, but they could be lovers for just one day. And that would be heroic. Doing so allows you to be a decent person, a good person, and heroic. The Bodhisattva was heroic, is heroic in the fundamental sense, he says, that you begin to feel that you can actually do it and that you are actually doing it. And when you do that, you get feedback. We were just talking about that, confirming it. Feedback is so critical. And then one can see, quote, a skeleton of the world that functions in terms of wakefulness. The skeleton of the world that functions in terms of wakefulness. We ask to wake up, to be aware, to be present, to be focused, to practice, to relax, to sit. It is difficult. It is difficult. I think it actually becomes less difficult the further along you get and the more that you practice. So it's especially important now because as President Biden said, we're in a time of crisis and we're at an inflection point. Though it's been dark times for a long time, and sometimes we read the newspaper and they seem to be darker. But I did read a great article in the Times today that said some of the early data about the problems with the Delta variation have proven as more data is collected to be not as serious, especially if you've been vaccinated even once. And they were saying, depending on where you live in your circumstances, neighborhoods, etc., that really only 1 in 5,000 people who've been vaccinated test positive for the Delta virus, and that they don't get that sick and they get better. And there's very few hospitalizations. So that's the more current data that says that we should not stop being out there in the world if we've been vaccinated, if we're wearing masks, that we don't really have to be consumed by a fear of being sick. And that to me was very helpful and enabled me to wake up a little bit that maybe I'm being too cautious and too fearful. So he continues, pages 109 and 110, you have an unbroken lineage of companionship and a friend whose example you can follow. You probably have more than one friend, and we know how many folks are in that lineage. You are working with your own Buddha nature, with a spiritual friend, and within an unbroken lineage of goodness that has continued without interruption from the time of the Buddha until right now. Although we are alone, we're really not alone. And that is an enormous learning. Although we are alone, we're really not alone. So jumping into the ocean of Dharma. Now, I never jump into the ocean. I love the ocean. I spend a lot of time in the summer at the ocean, many different oceans in Cape Cod, and the Jersey Shore, and I'm the person that stands by the shore and puts a toe in and then the other toe in and waits for the cold chill to go over and then maybe goes a little deeper and deeper. And I marvel at the people who just walk right in and jump in and swim. So how does one become comfortable swimming in the ocean? Trungpa tells us we have to lose any reference point. Jumping into the ocean of Dharma. When you find yourself completely without a reference point, You have the reference point of no reference. And when you completely run out of reference points altogether, when you no longer can see the shore or remember which directions it's in, you have no reference point and you are yourself completely. When you have no reference point, you are yourself completely. You are awake. You are there. But you have to do it rather than talk about it. And you have to relax. Now, we know this because they say if you're ever in trouble in the water, you've got to relax and come up and float. And you won't sink and you'll be okay. So we've got to remember to relax. There's a very concrete example. That's what I love about these teachings. They're so concrete. But you have to do it rather than talk about it, and you have to relax. That is why it has been said that words do not produce the awakened state of mind. Only experience does that. I'm going to read that again because I think it's so important and so wonderful. That is why it has been said that words do not produce the awakened state of mind. Only experience does so. And the next to the last paragraph on that page. Once you have committed yourself to jumping into the ocean, you can swim across the ocean. In doing so, you don't use any means except your own arms and legs. That process seems to be both good and necessary. Samsara may be quite bewildering and it creates blindness, but at the same time, there are ways to get out of it. And then he tells us how to do that. He's great. First of all, it's very linear. First of all, you have to give up trying to find a way to end samsara. Okay, we check that one. Whenever there is goal orientation that puts you back into the familiar cycle of samsara, and you spin around in samsara again and again, it's like working to become a millionaire and business fails. Whereas if you regard yourself selling what is necessary and appreciating what you sell, then you might become a millionaire by seeming chance. So I'm going to go back to Suzuki and another quote from him. We'll kind of end this part of the reading where we began. He says, "Big mind is something to express, not something to figure out. Big mind is something you have, not something to seek for." Thank you all so much. Thank you. Thank you. John will take over.
Thank you, Jane. That was wonderful.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Yeah. So we're being exhorted to jump into the ocean of Dharma, take the Bodhisattva vow, and to become Bodhisattvas. The foundation of all of this is, as was contained in everything that Jane said, is bodhicitta, awakened mind. Bodhicitta. That's really the big mind that Suzuki Roshi talked about. Little mind is our thinking mind. It thinks about me and my projects and my world and how I'm doing. Big mind is just here. It's unstoppable. It's your constant awareness of the 5 objects of the senses, as well as mental events. It's effortless. It's happening right now. as you listen to these words, as you see your computer screen, as you become aware of your bottom in the chair or wherever you happen to be sitting, all of it is your own thoughts. It's just going on all the time. This is the big mind. It's big because there's no I and other in it. It's just this constant, non-stop awareness. It's described as being both temporal and physical, time and space, and it's called the space, the dhatu in Sanskrit, yin in Tibetan. Everything arises and passes away in it. Everything. It's the womb from which all phenomena, everything that we can experience arises, and it's the graveyard into which they all pass in the instant. Just like these words, they come out of this mouth, these gestures, they appear, and as they appear, they're disappearing. In the chant, this is what's called the Dharmakaya, the Dharma body of the Buddha, which means the reality body of the Buddha. It's not involved in fiction, it's not involved in concept, it's what is happening in the moment. And this is the bodhicitta that we enter. This is what the Mahayana is all about. And in this space, all the virtues that are described are there. The gentleness. Why is it gentle? Because there's no I and other. I and other, when we have I and other, there's constantly conflict, constantly manipulation, sort of a seeking a position for I relative to other, which does a violence to the world. That's little mind, thinking mind. But in big mind, here in the present moment, it's open, it's clear. There is no I and other going on. There is just constant appreciation of all of this, the beauty of this world. This is what's meant by bodhicitta, awakened mind. And it's the essence of what it means to follow the Bodhisattva path. The Bodhisattva is the individual who is committed to dwelling in bodhicitta, to coming back from the dreams of thought, of I and other, the anxieties, and to living in this world, this beautiful world, and there are no reference points because there's no I and other. It's just the giving up of reference point, and what that means is that we have no axe to grind. We have no purpose to fulfill. We have no place that we're heading towards, going to. We're simply floating in the midst of all this. It could be scary. There's a scariness to it, a groundlessness to it. That's why that wonderful tagline that people used to put in their emails, Rinpoche saying, the bad news is we're falling through centerless space. That's having no reference points. The good news is there is no ground. We're not going to land anywhere. Crash. There's just this constant. It's amazing. It's cosmic that each one of us, if we can even talk about being a one of us, is floating in the midst of all of this constant changing presentation. This is what it means to jump into the ocean of Dharma. And that there are so many people who have done this in the past, and that they want us to join them. This lineage of people is very encouraging. There's a quality of friendship in it, of love, of welcoming. Now he talks about, going on from where Jane left off, that the inspiration in the Hinayana stage of the path, and this is why we come to the path. We come to the path because we're suffering, we're unhappy, we're lost, we're confused, and we're unhappy. And so the inspiration is to find some resolution of that, to save ourselves from this suffering, this unhappiness, this confusion, this not knowing, understanding. And the way we do that is by beginning to study the path, and what we study are the three marks of existence, which are impermanence. That's everything is constantly changing. And he's not talking about the fact that cars rust, that the seasons change, although there's that. But it's right now that everything is impermanent. This image on the computer screen, these words, what we experience in the moment is a constant changing. And that within that, there is suffering because there's this concern for me, this creation, this constant reference point of I that we come back to. We say, how am I doing? Am I understanding anything? Am I getting anywhere on the path? I. And it's a sack of woe. It's a sack of unhappiness. And then there is impermanence, suffering, and the fact that one can become free of the constant reference point of self-aggrandizement, of self. And that is called egolessness. And the way in which that happens, it's not some discovery, or could be, of something, but it's so much as it is coming into the present moment. When we wake up from the dreams, from little mind, as Roshi calls it, Suzuki Roshi. In the Tibetan tradition, they call it sem in Tibetan. It means little mind, neurotic mind, thinking mind, worrying mind, self-aggrandizing mind. And we come back from that little constant sort of dream into what? Awareness of this. It's so simple. It's already here waiting for us. And we come back to that, and it's full of gentleness and kindness. It's gentle because there's no struggle for I and other in it. That has been given up, at least for the moment. And so it's kind because it's so beautiful. There's a softness to it, a softness to the colors of this world and the sounds and all of the senses. So what he says is the inspiration in the Hinayana is to save yourself. You want to save yourself from this suffering that we're going through, this confusion that we bring to the path. And to do so, you need to make a relationship with the three marks of existence. And when the way that works is that we begin to practice shamatha, mindfulness meditation. And in mindfulness meditation, we come back from little mind to something. Maybe it's the breath. We do this sitting on a cushion. Shamatha is only practiced sitting on a cushion. You can't practice it while you're driving your car, while you're talking to another person. You come back to some object of meditation. It might be the breath, could be a mantra, could be transcendental meditation, could be the candle flame on your shrine before you. And in doing that, you cut the anxiety of thought, of little mind. You cut the constant searching for reference points for I and other. How am I doing? Oh, that's out there, so therefore I'm here and I'm okay. Back and forth we go. And we cut that with shamatha. And we achieve a degree of relief from the grossest forms of suffering. The constant searching for position, the constant searching for some better way to be, the constant searching for happiness. We cut that and we come back and rest. He says, in the Hinayana, you transcend one form of goal orientation by understanding that you have to cut through your own personal ambition and aggression. That's so aggressive. And I want to get something for myself, and relate with egolessness and suffering. You have to actually stop trying to get away from suffering and see it. See all the things of your life. He says, but you still have the goal of attaining enlightenment. You still want to get really, really out there. So the last ambition of the Hinayanist is the desire to watch yourself attaining enlightenment. But that ambition is cut through at the Mahayana level. What it or vice versa. When you cut through that ambition of trying to get enlightened, of trying to save yourself, it's giving up all reference points. It's floating free in this awareness of this world. And that is the entrance into the Mahayana. That is the absence of ambition. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. That it's really a giving up of a structure, which is scary. We're giving up this idea that we're going to get somewhere. And instead, we're just floating free in this world as it arises now. We are appreciating it. We are interacting with it. At the very beginning of this chapter, he said that bodhicitta has three components: compassion, skillful means, and knowledge. That's karuna, upaya, and prajna. And what that means is that when we give up being lost in thought, which is always about evaluation, good and bad, hope and fear, then we can begin to see the world clearly, not through the veils, these veils of good and bad and hope and fear and judgment and evaluation that we're always imposing. We begin to see the world as it is, devoid or beyond our personal judgments. That's the prajna. And when we do that, we begin to appreciate it as it is and resonate with it as it is. Not in terms of what it can do for me or to me, but the beauty of it as it arises. And that's the compassion. And then finally, having done that, we can begin to interact with it skillfully to help other people and ourselves come present and to embody the value of this world as it is, that it's fundamentally worth being here for. He calls that basic goodness of the world, that we begin to embody it, resonate with it, live it. This basic goodness that the world is fundamentally valuable for no reason whatsoever. It's just fundamentally, in itself, of value. And when we begin to resonate with that, we begin to act in accordance with that. That is skillful means. So then he says the inspiration to go further. He says, in the Hinayana, the first stage of the path, when we're so concerned, which is fine, that's the way we get here, with release from suffering, then our orientation is more towards individual discipline than to social service. But in the Mahayana stage of the path, we begin to give up that self-absorption, and there's really nothing left to do but to interact with other people. And then social service, as he puts it, begins to become the dominant value. And he says you are inspired by what you have heard of the Bodhisattva path and are willing to jump into the ocean of Dharma. And the two signs of the trained practitioner, Bodhisattva, are learnedness and meditation. The mark of learnedness is you are tamed and peaceful, rather than a snobbish intellectual or an angry scholar who makes enemies with everybody. But you're tamed and peaceful. This is the mark of learnedness. And the mark of meditation is you are less distracted and less temperamental. You're here. We're present. And this is heroism. It's heroism. Why is it heroic? It's because we're giving up self-concern. We're giving up egotism in the grossest sense of that word. And we're coming present into this kindness of the present moment and being of service That means to be participating with other people in a kind and generous way. We're inspired to do that. He says, you're not concerned with whether or not you can succeed on the path. You just want to do it. You're not concerned with yourself. And there is a hunger for the teachings. There's a hunger for going further with this, for losing yourself in this ocean of Dharma and becoming a real human being. And then he talks about making a formal commitment. Well, this isn't finally. And he says, you may feel that you are following the path and that a vow is redundant, but it is necessary to make a formal commitment. He says, you may feel that you need to wait until you're ready, but you'll never get there if you do that. He says, that's like waiting for Godot. You remember Godot never comes? They just sit there on the stage, those two guys waiting for Godot. He never arrives. So you have to make the formal commitment. You have to do it. You have to make the leap when you're ready for it, when you're inspired, when you begin to see this logic. He says you have an inquisitive interest in the Bodhisattva path and you're not scared by it. It's so deep, it's so profound. This contains emptiness. We haven't even gotten to that yet. Shunyata, that's the whole atmosphere of the Bodhisattva path. Emptiness. Empty of what? Empty of any concern with self. And then, similarly, with the back and forth between I and other, with self-aggrandizement by using others, all that goes in emptiness. Once you've taken the vow, it is like stepping into the vehicle and actually taking the journey. It's very personal and at the same time very public. And then here's a really powerful statement. You have sold yourself to others, are no longer your own property, but the property of sentient beings. This is such a gorgeous, heartbreaking statement of giving up of egotism. You have sold yourself to others. You are no longer your own property, but the property of sentient beings. You no longer have any privacy. Concentration, focusing your mind one-pointedly on an object, shamatha. You may need privacy, but awareness, coming present here in the present moment, no privacy, completely open. In taking the Bodhisattva vow, you're dedicating yourself to the benefit of others. You're not making yourself perfect first. Instead, you are making things perfect for others. He says you have to begin to expand yourself and then realize that no ground exists for you to operate. You have to give up privacy, and even on the public level, because there's no comparison, privacy in public anymore. You're celebrating the fact that you have found Buddha nature. You are pregnant with Buddha nature and with wisdom and compassion. Because why? Because we're coming present, because we are switching our loyalty from the dreams, the machinations of thought, little mind. We're switching our loyalty from that to this present moment, where this is the only place it lives, right now. What a leap. Taking a leap into nowhere. Finally, he talks about aspiration and application. Aspiration, he says, is like ordering a food in a restaurant, and application is then like eating it. So we take the Bodhisattva vow, and then we have to actually jump into this ocean of Dharma, into this ocean, this reference pointless ocean of awareness. The inspiration is a real identification with the Bodhisattva ideal of giving and surrendering. We're giving to this, and we're surrendering to this present moment. It is like signing up for the army. It is almost like walking into heroism, but it is uncertain whether you will live through it. He says, when you commit yourself to the Bodhisattva path, if you really do it, there is a tremendous sense of, what have I done? This sounds Jewish. What have I done? A feeling of empty heart. That is the aspiration, the mind of aspiration. And the second aspect of actually doing it, of application, begins as soon as you take the Bodhisattva vow. And I'm just going to read this. I, so-and-so, am going to take the vow of a Bodhisattva. From today onward, until the attainment of enlightenment, I am going to commit myself to the path of the Bodhisattva lineage and practice the Bodhisattva path. I am willing to be a bridge, boat, earth, water, or fire. I am willing to be a slave, physician, path, highway, taxi, bus, airplane, whatever is needed. This is his version. I am willing to commit myself to having people walk on me, sit on me, use me. I am willing for people to be inside me or outside me. I am willing to be like a big whale that could swallow somebody, swim across the water, and spit them out. Anybody could use any part of me, any part of my physical existence or psychological territory. What an expression of generosity. And then finally this. The Bodhisattva vow is the statement that you are wholly committed to the Bodhisattva path. For the first time in your life, you are no longer a nuisance, but a good citizen. That step of taking the Bodhisattva vow comes from the inspiration that Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature, awakened mind, is already in you. That is why you could make such a commitment. That's so important that we begin to understand, or maybe we do understand, that awakened mind is here now. It's something we come back to. So we could have a discussion, and you can direct your comments and questions to Jane or me or anybody. Laura's here, and Michael, Barry, and whoever you like.
Well, I'll start off. I mean, it was, both of your presentations were really lovely and wonderful. And I really appreciate Jane's comments about kind of the aspirational nature of this and how it seems so, it's really beautiful in in its selflessness. And at the same time, you know, this is a huge ask. And so one of the things I appreciated was the act as if element that was talked about. And I don't know if I have more to say than that. This is something that, I guess the other thing is, this is something that I guess requires a lot of reminders, re-intentioning, because I think ego is so strong, it's easy to just go right back to kind of habitual patterns of territory and what's in it for me and that kind of thing.
Anybody want to address that? I'll say something. As we come to the path, and time is just an idea. It feels as though we've been struggling for a long time, and that maybe we will continue to struggle for a long time. But every time we come present, time is out the window. And I put it to you this way, that the Buddhas look at sentient beings and see that they are confused for an instant, because awareness stretches forever, beyond time. So every time we come back to the present, if we truly come back all the way, we are giving up that doubt, that self-doubt. I can't do it. It's going to take too long. It's going to take so long, it's going to be painful. And we give that up and we just come back. That self-doubt is what's given up, because we came back and we're giving up self. We're giving up that conversation with I. I can, I can't, I hope, I wish, I regret. And we give that up, and here we are, appreciating the beauty of this present moment, the vividness, the power. Switching allegiance, he called it. This whole thing of how long it's going to take, is just another dream of ego, of I. A story that we tell ourselves. And what we're really doing is coming back slowly, maybe not slowly, maybe fastly, to reality. It's so ironic.
Thanks, John.
Karen Sue.
So I'm really struck this week by this chapter with the message that how do you say it? Tathagarba is already in me. I know I keep hearing that, and yet this week it seemed so clear and so real and seems so easy and yet so difficult to just let it all go, to be with what's always been there. That's really special for me. Really, really special. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, consider, we have these painful doubts, fears. Where did they go? Right now, they're gone. They're gone for the moment. And where were they? Where did they go? We're back here in this space of reality. But then we have the doubt again, and it seems like it's going to go on forever. But that's just a seeming. And it only lasts as long as the thought lasts. And those thoughts are like skywriting in the sky, you know? Remember the planes that used to write in the sky? And they'd say smoke Marlboros or smoke Camel cigarettes or whatever, like that. And then that smoke would just disappear and the sky was always there. That's the bodhicitta, that sky. Our thoughts are so fleeting. They're with all their anxieties.
I would like to say something about my experience, which is that I am filled to the brim with feelings and realizations about how much, probably for my entire life, I have viciously fought all of this. And and that's how I feel right now. Is I don't feel as though I'm fighting it now, but I'm feeling as though I have fought it. And it's a very interesting experience for me. I might even dare say the word liberating, which is not a word that I tend to use. Very often, it's the opposite. So that's all I can say right now. There's probably a word, another word is I could say embarrassing, but I would never admit that, certainly during my battle. I was, what's the word? I was determined to stick, however, almost in proportion to how much I suffocated from it. I was going to say suffered, but suffocated is the right word, you know. But I just couldn't break it or wouldn't break it. So I might dare to say today that it's a time of celebration. That's all I have to say. And very moving, extremely moving. Thank you all.
Can I ask Peter a question? I'm just wondering if you said you were determined and you fought against it, but you kept coming back. So what is it that kept you coming back despite whatever resistance or anything else that you were feeling that wasn't leading you down that path?
Oh, I don't think I kept coming back. I think I kept bumping into it. It was not a choice in that respect. You know what I mean? Understand? I kept bumping into it. That was also the experience, bumping in. You know. Now it's less bumped.
John, you're muted. Please repeat.
I'm saying there's a thing in the teachings about karma. And if you believe in this kind of thing, or it makes sense to you, they say that people who come to the teachings have been accumulating the karma over many lifetimes, and that it's been building. I think he said this somewhere in here too, that, each one of us who's here and is connected with the Dharma, the teachings, it's a very powerful connection. And all of you who've been coming so much, and studying the teachings and practicing and doing something as silly as sitting motionless for an hour at a time. I mean, what's up with that? Maybe it's true, maybe that's all this karma accumulating and bringing us to this path and this moment of enlightenment, or this path of enlightenment. Meg, I thought you had a question or a comment earlier. No? Did I mistook? Okay, sorry. Christy Sanzaro.
Hi there, everybody. I'm really touched and moved by just everybody's presentations and thoughts around the Bodhisattva vows. And I feel like at the moment I'm kind of like teetering on the edge of like a cliff or something. Or maybe it's what Jane said about the ocean, like you put a toe in, with this Bodhisattva vow. I mean, I haven't taken the refuge vows yet, so that would be first. But I wondered if anybody that's like taken the Bodhisattva vow and is on the other side, or like went off the cliff with it, would just share are there moments when you wish you hadn't taken it, or you beat yourself up over taking it and feeling like you're not, that you shouldn't have taken it because you're not living up to it, or and I mean, it could just be light and humorous, but I just wondered if anybody could share what, that have taken that vow, what it feels like to be on the other side of that, I guess. And no worries if it seems like too big of an ask to share that, but.
Laura, Barry, Michael.
The only regret I've ever had is times when I haven't lived up to it.
Philip has had his hand up. Yeah, I would just offer this, Christy, in the way of encouragement. It's very gradual and it's very natural, and it makes utter sense. So of course, we're complicated people and we screw up all the time. There are moments when it doesn't make perfect sense, but generally it does. And taking the vow, it's just like a mark, right? It's like a mark in this vast expanse of time. But it just happens all the time. Somebody used the expression last week, it's like celebrating a birthday. It's just like a notation. And celebrations and notations, they're important. But it's much more organic or integral than that. It just happens and continues to happen and continues to happen. So be confident. Tripp's word, that's a perfect word. Yeah, be confident. The confidence will grow. It'll make more and more and more and more sense.
Thanks, Philip.
And it's aspirational. If you look at it literally, it's impossible, of course, right? It's aspirational. So bear that in mind too.
We're practicing, or yeah, it's what Jane said. It's like we can fake it until we make it, or we can, yeah, aspire. Okay. Aspire to be brave, maybe. Thank you.
Judith.
Christy, I've only taken the refuge vow, but and when I took it, I didn't feel oh, I have arrived and now I really do completely believe in the Buddha, the Sangha, and the Dharma. I felt more like I'd like to believe in that. But having taken the vow, I think I come back to that time and again and say, what is more true for me personally than that? And now it feels more a part of me and less of only an aspiration. It feels like, yes, that is the truth, and coming back to it and recognizing self-doubt that occurs all the time and getting tired to death of just wearing myself out with thinking and trying to figure, when to get out of the market and when to this. I mean, it just seems such a waste of time and energy, more and more and more. So I think we're all works in progress here. And it's, kind of announcing an intention and trying it out. I don't know if that helps.
No, thank you, Judith. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And jump in also, Christy. I have not done the Bodhisattva vow, but my sense of it is I see it as a confirmation of what we've already been doing, and I trust that in myself and that everybody in this group, in the Sangha, is here for a reason, and that is self-development and moving in this direction of rightful living. And I trust, I guess I'm saying, or have a belief that we're all here wanting to not just do no harm in the world, but actually do some good in the world. And I'm seeing the Bodhisattva vow as that confirmation of this is what I've been aspiring to be, and this is a lack of a better term, this is a badge that we get to wear, and own it a little more. That I don't think it's any mistake that we've landed in this Sangha and on this path, and it just, I think, like Philip was saying, it's a progression, and this is maybe a marker along that progression, and it's just, I guess, another level of we already are it, and this is another confirmation of that. That's just the way that I'm seeing it in this moment.
Thanks, Kurt. I like that idea of trust, you know, and that I feel like it could give me a sense of just doing that, just, you know, taking the vow and then trusting, you know, just trusting it and owning it, like you're saying, you know, and just making it maybe a little more intentional, a little more, yeah, just wanting, just trusting, which I struggle with. Thank you.
Trip.
Yeah, I tried to squeeze in a 24-hour retreat starting Saturday night through yesterday. And what's the thought that's prompted, and I'll be honest with you, it was I did not emerge from the cushion a happy, blissed out man. It was almost like ego knew at the beginning of so yesterday morning, I started out at like 6:30 and it was a nice sit. And I was thinking about some things that were really deeply concerning me. Actually, things that I was on the verge of getting very much worrying about neurotically. And I kind of got to lunchtime and I was feeling like, okay, this is good. You know, I think I'm seeing some things more clearly that I'd like to share with the Sangha. And then the afternoon unwound, and I almost felt it evokes the image of the closer you get to the truth, the more brutally aggressive ego can get. And I think and I guess a question / comment is, you know, vigilance. Started out the 24 hours with fairly modest plan. And by last night, I was a pretty cranky dude and pretty dissatisfied, pretty unhappy, worried about some things, and the worry kind of spiraled out of control. And so is it fair to say that as we, you know, progress along the path, and in particular, the Bodhisattva vow, ego still stays there and is just ready to pounce? Is that a fair statement? I believe ego remains there, eager to pounce. I'll state it that way. And I don't think that's a bad thing to be aware of, unless somebody has some other insights into it. And the last thing I'll say is what comes to mind. I can't remember some of the imagery that's been shared. You know, the idea of you don't have to play fair with ego, and slashing, and, you know, doing whatever you got to do to battle ego. Yesterday I just felt crappy, but all day as I kind of recovered and came back to reality, it made me realize how important it is to, it's not keep your guard up, but to be aware that even as much progress as I feel like I'm making and learning and watching among all of you, ego's there. And I'm just curious how that relates to the Bodhisattva vow and the threat that ego poses, no matter where you are in the path. It just, it was really intense. It was really intense. It felt like a year ago. The only difference is becoming aware of what it was a little more quickly, and providing some time and space to recover. I have no idea if this all makes sense to you all, but I put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
Pip, I just thought about the historical Buddha, and like, I think, and I know, John, you can correct me on this, but right before he was going to achieve nirvana, at the very end, after sitting there and calling the earth to witness and all the, you know, David Holda, there was like every monster and every you know, terrible creature and fear like appeared, you know, at once, even at that moment, after all that progress and all of that, you know. I'm just thinking of the magnificence of where he was at, and And I wonder, even for the historical Buddha at the very end, like that was what he was contending with. And so it just made me think of that trip, what you were talking about.
Thank you. I mean, that kind of captures exactly how I felt, an all-out attack. Yeah.
I did a 5-day retreat this summer. And if you hit pause at 24 hours, I might have sounded a lot like you're sounding right now. So at least for me, some of it was just like, wait it out.
I agree. I think that's, and then, yeah, both great comments. The only last thing I'll just say is I do think the one area that I'd like to kind of cultivate a little bit more mindfulness is in our very limited view of time. Like wait it out, right? Like you feel crappy, want to feel better now, is a very, very compressed, limited view of time, as opposed to going through 24 hours and coming out of it may not be a matter of instantaneous or a minute. It could be several days, could be I don't know. But you know what I mean? Like not to limit ourselves to the immediate need for relief and this compressed view of time. Yeah. And I feel better 24 hours later. I'm a nicer person right now. But thank you for listening.
Jane, you're muted. But...
I'd like to go back to Don's comment about this being a big ask. And I think it is. At the same time, anything that we do and is worth doing and that we feel better after we do it is a big ask. So this is just another one and maybe a bigger one, but very, very worth taking that on. And then if you would indulge me, please, for a moment, I would really like to read one of my favorite poems that I find inspirational and have read to students for many, many years. It's by C.P. Kavarfi. It's called Ithaca with a K. He's a Greek poet. This is in translation. May I read it to you? It's not that long. As you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Lastrygonians, Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't be afraid of these. You'll never find things like that on your way as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare excitement stirs your spirit and your body. Lastrygonians, Cyclops, wild Poseidon, you won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbors you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind. As many sensual perfumes as you can, and may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from their scholars. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for, but don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years. So you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you've gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvelous journey. Without her, you wouldn't have set out. She has nothing left to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithacas mean.
Well, on that note, I think it's about time.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. And it resonates with me with one of my favorite poems, which is Tennyson's Ulysses.
Right, same.
Yeah, it's very, very similar.
What was the name of the poem again, Jane?
I'm sorry?
What was the name of the poem again?
Ithaca with a K, Ithaka.
Okay.
It's from the Greek myth of, Ulysses finding his way home, back to Ithaca.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Sea Peak of Arfi. He's a Greek poet, beautiful poet.
Well, friends, let's close by dedicating the merit. This is a really Bodhisattva thing to do. So I'll put it up on screen, and I'm going to mute everybody just so we don't get total cacophony. But tomorrow we'll have a group discussion after the meditation in the evening, and then we'll have cacophony. So come for that. Here we go. Wait a second. By this merit, may all obtain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. By the confidence of the golden sun of the great East, may the lotus garden of the Rigden's wisdom bloom. May the dark ignorance of sentient beings be dispelled. May all beings enjoy profound, brilliant glory.
Thanks, John and everybody.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jane.
Jane,
Thanks, John.
Aaron, Sue.
Thanks.
Christy,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Thank you,
Everyone.
John, Jane.
So fun sharing.
Thank you all.
Jane.
Yeah.
Thank you, Trip.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.